The galaxy was vast, full of stars, planets, and alien civilizations, but not all were at peace. The Torethi were one such civilization, once powerful and feared across the stars. Their technology had been unmatched, their armies mighty. But a great war had shattered their empire, leaving them broken and alone. No one remembered the Torethi for their greatness anymore. Now, they were a forgotten race, cast aside by the very galaxy they had once ruled. The Torethi were not evil, but their pride and thirst for power had led to their downfall. Other alien species had banded together to strip them of their power, leaving the Torethi exiled on the outermost edges of the galaxy. Their homeworld, once a shining jewel in the universe, was now a desolate wasteland. The once great cities were in ruins, the streets empty, the skies darkened. There was no one left to help them. As the last survivors of their kind struggled to survive, they sent a desperate message into the void. The message was faint, hidden in layers of encryption, but it was clear. Help us. Save us. It was a cry for aid, a plea for redemption. But who would listen? Who would care about a species that had once been so feared? Back on Earth, Captain Mara Cole sat in her command chair aboard the Perseverance, staring at the screen in front of her. She had just received the message. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, an encrypted distress signal from a far-off corner of space. The message was weak, barely reaching her ship's sensors. But it was there, a faint cry for help. "Captain, the signal is coming from an uncharted sector," her communications officer, Lieutenant Harris, said as he analyzed the data. "It's weak, but it's definitely there." Captain Cole frowned. "Who's sending it? And why now?" she muttered, her mind racing. The coordinates pointed to the edge of known space, a place where no one ventured. It was far beyond the reach of most civilizations. The message was clear, though. It was a call for help. "Any idea who it's from?" she asked, already guessing the answer. "It's coming from a species known as the Torethi," Harris replied. "They've been lost to the galaxy for years. No one has heard from them in decades. After their fall, they disappeared into the shadows of space. The galaxy moved on, leaving them behind." Captain Cole sat back, her thoughts heavy. The Torethi were infamous for their arrogance and cruelty before their fall, but hearing that they were now on the brink of extinction stirred something inside her. Was this truly a cry for help, or was it a trap? No matter the risks, Captain Cole knew one thing. Humanity couldn't turn its back on those in need, no matter how far they had fallen. "Set a course for those coordinates," she ordered. "We're going to find out what happened to them." The Perseverance roared to life as it changed course, heading toward the unknown, where the Torethi awaited. No one knew what lay ahead, but Captain Cole was determined to find out. This could be their chance to show the galaxy that humanity was different. And so, their journey into the forgotten corners of space began, with the faint hope of redemption hanging in the balance. The Perseverance sailed through the deep void of space, its engines humming steadily as Captain Mara Cole stared at the blinking lights on the ship's control panel. Her eyes flicked over the coordinates again, the faint signal from the Exorethi still echoing in her mind. It had been hours since the signal was first received, but the mystery of its origin only deepened. Lieutenant Harris sat beside her, his fingers moving quickly over his console as he worked to decode the message. "The encryption is tough, Captain. It's unlike anything we've encountered before," he said, frustration clear in his voice. "Keep working on it," Captain Cole replied, her voice calm but determined. "We're not turning back now." The crew of the Perseverance was nervous but focused. Most of them had never heard of the Torethi before, and those who had only knew them as the fallen race that had once ruled a distant part of the galaxy. The idea of helping them seemed almost impossible. After all, they had been rejected by everyone else. Why would humanity step in now? But Cole knew that humanity's guiding principle was different. Where others saw enemies, humanity saw opportunity, for redemption, for helping those who had nowhere else to turn. The silence of space around them felt heavy as Harris worked. "Captain, I think I'm getting something," he said, his voice suddenly sharp with excitement. "The message, it's fragmented, but I think I have it." Captain Cole leaned forward, her attention now entirely on the screen in front of her. The words that appeared were scattered and incomplete, but they were unmistakably clear. "Please, do not abandon us. We are alone. We cannot survive without aid." Xorathi. Survivors. There was more, but the rest was too damaged to make sense of. The message was a cry for help, no doubt about it. Captain Cole could feel the weight of it. This wasn't just about picking up a lost signal. It was about saving a species, offering a lifeline to those who had no one else. "We need to make contact," Captain Cole said firmly. She stood up, her hands clenched into fists at her side. "Prepare the ship for entry into the Xorathi system. We're going to find them." The crew began to move with purpose. They had a mission now, one that wasn't about conquest or power. It was about helping those who needed it most. As the Perseverance continued on its course, Captain Cole couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to enter something far bigger than a rescue mission. The Xorathi were a fallen species, an entire race on the brink of extinction, and humanity had a chance to change their fate. Harris called out from his station, "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates. I'm detecting a faint signal from a planet ahead. It's definitely Xorathi." "On screen," Captain Cole ordered. The image that appeared on the monitor was chilling. The once thriving world of the Xorathi was now a barren, desolate wasteland. The sky was dark, and the planet's surface was covered with wreckage. Ruins of cities that had been reduced to rubble. It was a place of tragedy, a shadow of its former self. The silence in the control room was deafening. "This is where they're asking for help?" Harris asked, his voice small, almost uncertain. "This is where they are," Captain Cole replied, her voice steady, but filled with resolve. "And we're going to do everything we can to help them." The crew watched as the Perseverance prepared to descend into the shattered world below. Humanity was about to become part of a story far bigger than anything they had ever imagined. The Perseverance glided silently through the dark void of space, heading toward the Xorathi homeworld. The mission had taken a serious turn now. No longer just a distant cry for help, it was becoming a desperate search into the unknown. Every crew member aboard knew the risks. What if the Xorathi were hostile? What if this was all a trap? But Captain Cole had made her decision. They were going to help. Captain Cole stood at the front of the bridge, gazing out at the stars as the ship moved steadily forward. Her mind raced with possibilities, the weight of the mission heavy on her shoulders. She had always believed in humanity's ability to make a difference. But this was something else. The galaxy had cast out the Xorathi for a reason. Would they be able to trust the humans? Or would the encounter end in conflict? The quiet hum of the engines was suddenly broken by Lieutenant Harris's voice. "Captain, we've entered the uncharted sector. The signal's getting stronger." "Good. Keep me posted," Captain Cole replied without looking away from the stars. The closer they got, the more the tension built. The Perseverance had been on a few rescue missions before, but nothing like this. No one had ever helped the Xorathi before, and the fear in the crew's eyes was hard to ignore. Minutes turned into hours. As the ship drew closer to the planet, the comms officer, Lieutenant Klein, called out from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships ahead. Unknown ships, but they're heading directly toward us." Captain Cole's heart skipped a beat. Hostile ships. It was too soon for any response from the Xorathi. "Can you identify them?" she asked, stepping toward the tactical display. "Negative, Captain. The ships are using cloaking technology. They're not responding to our hails." A sense of unease swept over the bridge. Klein's words confirmed what they all feared. Someone didn't want them here. These ships were blocking their path, and whoever they belonged to, they were no friends of humanity. "Captain," Harris said, his voice low, "I'm not sure how we should approach. They could be waiting to ambush us." "Do they know we're human?" Captain Cole asked, her eyes narrowing. "I don't think so. We haven't broadcasted our ID. Good, Captain Cole replied, her mind already racing through their options. We need to keep moving. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, but don't fire unless fired upon. The tension was palpable, the crew unsure of what would happen next. Would these mysterious ships attack, or were they here for a different purpose? The uncertainty hung in the air like a heavy fog. Captain, I'm detecting a transmission from the ships ahead, Klein said. It's not a warning. It's a challenge. They're demanding we turn back. Who are they? Captain Cole muttered, more to herself than anyone else. She couldn't afford to make the wrong move now. Harris, can you get us any more information? Harris's fingers danced across his console, trying to decode the transmission. It's the Alliance, he said, a look of surprise crossing his face. The galactic powers that exiled the Chlorothi. They've been keeping tabs on anyone trying to reach the planet. They're trying to stop us from landing. Captain Cole clenched her jaw. The Alliance. Of course. They had to be the ones interfering. The same powers that had cast the Chlorothi out were now trying to prevent any attempt to offer them help. Prepare to fight if necessary, Captain Cole ordered, her voice steady. We're not turning back. We've come this far, and we're not stopping now. The Perseverance pushed forward, ready to face whatever came next. The unknown was vast, but so was humanity's resolve. As the crew braced themselves, the captain knew one thing for sure. This would be a fight for more than just survival. It would be a fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. The Perseverance flew silently through the dark sky above the shattered world of the Chlorothi. Captain Cole stood at the command console, her eyes fixed on the planet below. The scene before her was haunting. Once a beautiful world full of towering cities and bustling life, now reduced to a graveyard of broken buildings and charred landscapes. The planet was scared, its surface marked by the aftermath of war. We're close, Captain, Lieutenant Harris reported, his voice tense as he studied his screen. I'm reading several settlements on the surface. But the readings, they're all faint. The Chlorothi aren't exactly thriving down there. Captain Cole nodded. Prepare for descent. We need to make contact, no matter what. The crew was quiet as the ship began its descent. The Perseverance cut through the planet's atmosphere, shaking slightly as it passed through thick clouds of ash. The further they got, the more the planet seemed to reveal its pain. There was no sign of any thriving civilization. What remained of the Chlorothi was scattered, isolated, and surrounded by ruins. Landing in 5 minutes, Klein said, her voice flat. The planet's surface looked almost alien to them, even more so because of the damage it had suffered. Craters, burned forests, and broken highways stretched out below, a stark contrast to what it might have been before the war. Captain Cole's heart tightened. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was about offering hope to a species that had lost everything. The Perseverance touched down on the cracked earth. The ground trembled slightly as the landing gear made contact, and the ship settled into a quiet stillness. The crew gathered in the main hall as the ramp lowered, revealing the dark, ash-filled air of the planet's surface. Captain Cole took a deep breath, preparing herself for what came next. They had come here to help, but would the Chlorothi accept it? The message they had sent was filled with desperation, but desperation could also lead to distrust. The Chlorothi were a proud people, and they had lost everything. Stay alert, Captain Cole ordered, her voice firm. We don't know what we're walking into. The crew stepped off the ship, the ground cold, and cracked beneath their boots. They moved cautiously, scanning the surroundings. The once vibrant cities were now silent. There were no signs of life, no bustling crowds, no movement in the buildings. The only sound was the wind, carrying the dust of the dead world. As they advanced further, they found a small group of Chlorothi survivors hidden in a shelter. They were unlike the powerful beings described in old records. These Chlorothi were thin, weary, and broken, hiding in the shadows as if afraid of the world they had once controlled. Their eyes were filled with suspicion, but there was also a glimmer of something else. Hope. One of the Xorethi, a female named Kira, stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but clear. "You are the humans, the ones who came to save us." Captain Cole nodded. "We came because you asked for help. You're not alone anymore." The Xorethi watched them closely, their expressions unreadable. Kira's eyes narrowed, then softened. "You are brave to come here. The galaxy has turned its back on us. Why would you risk your lives to help a species like ours?" Captain Cole stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "Because everyone deserves a second chance, and humanity doesn't turn its back on those in need." There was a long silence before Kira spoke again. "I do not know if we can trust you. We have been betrayed too many times before. But we are willing to try." Captain Cole felt a sense of relief, but also the weight of the responsibility they carried. They had made it this far, but there was much more to do. The Xorethi were a proud species, and rebuilding their trust would not be easy. But at least now they had a chance. "Let's start with helping you rebuild," Captain Cole said, her voice resolute. "We're not leaving until you have a future." The survivors gathered closer, their faces filled with uncertainty, but also a growing hope. Captain Cole knew that this was just the beginning. There was much work ahead and many challenges to face, but humanity had made a step toward something greater, a chance to rebuild together. The days following their arrival were filled with tension and uncertainty. Captain Cole and her crew worked tirelessly to assist the Xorethi survivors, but there were many obstacles. The Xorethi, once proud and powerful, had lost everything. Their cities were in ruins, their technology was outdated, and their spirits were broken. But as the days passed, Captain Cole could see something changing. The survivors began to gather, their wariness of the humans slowly fading. Still, the question remained, could they trust each other? One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Captain Cole stood outside the temporary shelter where the Xorethi were now staying. She watched as a group of them gathered around a fire, speaking in hushed tones. Among them was Kira, the Xorethi woman who had first spoken to her. Kira had become the unofficial leader of the survivors, and it was clear that her trust would be key to their success. Captain Cole's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned to see Lieutenant Harris approaching, his face serious. "Captain, we need to talk," he said, his voice low. Cole gestured for him to speak. "What's going on?" "We've been making progress with the repairs to their energy systems, but something's not adding up. I've been analyzing the energy readings from the planet's core, and I think they're hiding something." Captain Cole frowned. "Hiding something? What do you mean?" "I'm not sure yet, but the readings are inconsistent. It's almost as if they're using energy from an unknown source. It could be a hidden weapon, or something else entirely. We need to know more." The news didn't sit well with Captain Cole. They were here to help, but if the Xorethi were hiding something dangerous, that could change everything. Still, she couldn't let fear guide her actions, not when lives were at stake. "We'll investigate further, but don't jump to conclusions. Let's give them a chance to explain before we make any assumptions," she said firmly. As night fell, the survivors gathered in the main shelter to discuss their next steps. Captain Cole was invited to sit with them. Kira, still cautious but more open than before, stood at the front of the room. "You've helped us more than anyone ever has," Kira said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "But I need to know, why? Why are you doing this? We were once a threat to your people. We've lost everything. You don't owe us anything." Captain Cole's gaze met Kira's. She could see the pain in her eyes, the remnants of a once great leader who had seen everything crumble. It would be difficult to earn her full trust, but it was a challenge Captain Cole was willing to take on. "We help because it's the right thing to do," Captain Cole replied, her voice unwavering. "Humanity believes in second chances. Everyone deserves a future, even those who've made mistakes. And that includes the Korathi. You've been through too much to be left alone in the dark." The room fell silent as the words hung in the air. Kira's expression softened, though doubt still lingered in her eyes. After a long pause, he nodded. "Perhaps you're right," Kira said quietly. "But trust is not something easily given. We were once betrayed by our allies. We were abandoned by the galaxy. If you are truly here to help us, then show us. Don't just say the words. Show us with your actions." Captain Cole nodded, understanding the weight of Kira's request. The Exorethi needed more than promises. They needed proof. Just then, one of the Exorethi survivors, an older man named Ralith, stepped forward. He was the eldest among them, and his eyes held the wisdom of a species that had once ruled the stars. "I may not understand why you're here, Captain," Ralith said, his voice heavy with age. "But I can see that you're different from the others. Perhaps we can learn to trust you. But it will take time." Captain Cole stood and nodded. "I understand. Trust is earned, not given. We'll prove ourselves, step by step." As she turned to leave, a faint rumble echoed from deep beneath the surface of the planet. The ground trembled slightly, and the Xorethi exchanged nervous glances. Captain Cole paused, a sense of unease creeping up her spine. Whatever it was, it didn't feel natural. Ralith's face grew even more somber. "Something has changed," he muttered. "It's happening again." "What's happening?" Captain Cole asked, her curiosity piqued. "It's the planet's core," Ralith said quietly. "It's unstable. We feared it would happen. The damage from the war. It's causing a chain reaction." Captain Cole's heart raced. If the planet's core was unstable, it could mean disaster for everyone. The Xorethi had already lost so much. Could they survive losing their home too? The tension in the air was thick. Captain Cole stood in front of the Xorethi survivors, her gaze fixed on the shifting landscape around them. The rumble from deep within the planet's core had faded, but it had left a lingering sense of unease. The ground beneath their feet trembled occasionally, as if reminding them that time was running out. "I don't know how much longer we have," Harris said, his voice grim. He had been studying the planet's energy readings and had confirmed that the core was dangerously unstable. If this continues, the entire planet could collapse. Captain Cole's heart sank. It was one thing to help a people rebuild from the ashes of war, but it was another to try and help them survive a planet that was quite literally falling apart beneath them. Kira, the Korathi leader, had been pacing nervously. "We've survived many things," she said, her voice steady but filled with sorrow. "But this, we can't survive this. Our technology is outdated. The damage is beyond repair." Captain Cole understood the gravity of the situation. The Xorethi had once been capable of incredible feats, but now they were reduced to using basic tools, struggling to survive in a world that had once been their pride. They had relied on advanced technology that was now beyond their reach. "We're not giving up," Captain Cole said firmly. "Humanity doesn't turn away from a challenge, no matter how big it is. We'll help you rebuild, but we need to work together." The survivors exchanged glances, some skeptical, others more hopeful. Kira's eyes were filled with doubt, but also something else. A flicker of trust. "You keep saying you want to help us," Kira said, her voice low. "But we've been betrayed before. Why should we believe you?" Captain Cole took a deep breath. She knew this was the moment that would make or break their mission. "Because we don't leave people behind," she said. "We help because it's the right thing to do, not because we expect anything in return. Humanity has always believed in second chances, and we believe you deserve one too." There was a long silence. Captain Cole could see the conflict in Kira's eyes. The Xorethi had been abandoned, forgotten, and betrayed by everyone they had once called allies. To trust anyone again was a challenge, especially humans, who, in the eyes of the Xorethi, were still a relatively young species compared to the advanced civilizations of the galaxy. Finally, Kira spoke. "You don't understand what it's like to have everything taken from you. We were once powerful, feared across the galaxy. Now we are nothing. We've lost our honor, our pride. You think you can give that back to us?" Captain Cole's heart ached at the raw emotion in Kira's voice. "I can't give you your past back," she said quietly. "But I can help you build a future. You don't have to be defined by your mistakes. Let's rebuild together." Kira's gaze softened. "It's not just about rebuilding our homes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's about rebuilding who we are. And I'm not sure we can do that." "You don't have to do it alone," Captain Cole replied, her voice filled with conviction. "We're here for you. We'll rebuild your cities, your technology, and most importantly, your hope. But it has to be a partnership." The survivors watched in silence, waiting for Kira's decision. Finally, Kira nodded, her eyes filled with both uncertainty and a hint of hope. "We'll try," she said. "But know this, Captain. We will never forget what we've lost. And if this partnership doesn't work, we'll go our separate ways. We'll survive, but on our terms." Captain Cole nodded. "I understand. But let's make sure it works. Together." With that, a fragile bond was formed. The Xorethi were still cautious, but the humans had earned their first step of trust. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And for Captain Cole, that was enough. As the days passed, the work began. The crew of the Perseverance worked side by side with the Xorethi to stabilize the planet's energy grid, patching up old systems and providing their advanced technology to help. It was slow, difficult work, but the progress was real. And with each passing day, the Xorethi began to believe. They began to see that the humans weren't just here to offer empty promises. They were here to offer a real chance at survival, a chance to rebuild everything that had been lost. The road ahead was still uncertain, and the planet's core continued to shake, but Captain Cole was confident. With humanity's help, the Xorethi could rise again. It wasn't just about saving a species, it was about showing the galaxy that compassion and hope were still alive, even in the darkest corners of space. The work on the planet had continued steadily, but the uneasy silence that had once filled the air had slowly been replaced with a tense energy. Captain Cole and her crew worked tirelessly with the Xorethi survivors, rebuilding energy grids and patching up old technology. Despite the planet's instability, there was progress. The Xorethi were beginning to rebuild their cities, their homes, and most importantly, their hope. But deep down, Captain Cole knew they were still on borrowed time. The planet's core was unstable, and the damage was beyond repair. If it exploded, everything they had worked for would be lost. The pressure was building, and Cole felt it in every decision she made. Yet she kept pushing forward, driven by the belief that this mission was about more than just saving a species. It was about restoring dignity and hope to those who had been forgotten. Then, one morning, the peace shattered. The Perseverance was monitoring the surrounding space when Lieutenant Harris suddenly called out, "Captain, we've got a fleet incoming. Multiple ships, all heavily armed. They're on an intercept course." Captain Cole's heart skipped a beat. "Who are they?" she asked, already moving toward the communications console. Harris's fingers flew across his station. "It's the Alliance, the same faction that exiled the Xorethi. They'd found us." Captain Cole's mind raced. The Alliance had been watching from the shadows, and now they were making their move. She had suspected something like this might happen. No one would simply let the Xorethi recover without opposition. The question was, what did the Alliance want? And why were they coming now? "How much time do we have?" she asked. 20 minutes, Captain," Harris replied, his face tight with worry. "If we don't prepare, they'll be upon us before we can react." "Send a message to the Xorethi," Captain Cole ordered. "Tell them to get to the shelters. Now." The crew scrambled into action. Klein and Harris worked together to prepare the Perseverance for possible combat, while Captain Cole sent messages to Kira, urging the Xorethi to take cover. They had no defense against the Alliance fleet. Not yet. The best they could do was stall and protect the survivors as best as they could. As the fleet grew closer, the Xorthi survivors began to gather in the shelters that had been hastily set up. Kira arrived at the Perseverance, her expression determined but worried. "What's happening, Captain? What do they want?" Captain Cole met her eyes. "The Alliance is coming. They've found us, and they won't let us rebuild without a fight." Kira's face tightened with anger. "They've always hated us. But this time, they won't just destroy our cities. They'll destroy everything. We have nothing left to lose." Captain Cole's eyes softened with understanding. "We can't let that happen. We'll fight if we have to, but we need to stick together. No matter what happens, we need to protect you." "We will fight with you," Kira said, her voice filled with resolve. "The Xorthi may have fallen, but we still know how to fight, and we won't go down without a struggle." Captain Cole nodded. The time for diplomacy was over. The Alliance had made it clear they wouldn't let the Xorthi rise again, and humanity would stand beside them, no matter the cost. The Perseverance's weapons were powered up, and the crew prepared for the worst. Captain Cole stood on the bridge, her mind sharp and focused. They couldn't afford to lose, not after everything they had been through. As the enemy ships came into view, the air was thick with anticipation. It was no longer a simple mission of mercy. It had become a battle for survival. A battle for the future of the Xorthi, and a test of humanity's resolve. "We're ready," Harris said, his voice steady despite the tension. Captain Cole looked out at the incoming ships, her hand gripping the console. "Then let's show them what we're made of." The first shots rang out as the battle began. The Perseverance fired its weapons, launching a barrage of energy blasts at the enemy ships. The Xorthi, standing alongside the humans, began to fire back with what little they had. Their weapons were old, but their will to fight was as strong as ever. The Alliance fleet, much larger and better equipped, pressed forward, determined to crush any resistance. But Captain Cole and her crew would not back down. They were fighting for more than just survival. They were fighting for a chance at redemption. The battle raged above the shattered world of the Xorthi. The Perseverance fired its weapons, unleashing energy blasts at the incoming Alliance ships. Despite their advanced technology, the human ship was holding its ground, using every bit of its strength to protect the planet below. The air was thick with tension, and the sounds of battle filled the space around them. Captain Cole stood at the command console, her hand steady as she navigated the chaos. Her mind was focused, her thoughts sharp, as the enemy fleet closed in on them. The Xorthi, though outmatched, were fighting alongside the humans, using whatever old weapons they could salvage. It wasn't much, but it was enough to show that they weren't going down without a fight. "We can't hold them off much longer, Captain," Lieutenant Harris called from his station. "Their firepower is overwhelming. We need reinforcements." Captain Cole's heart pounded in her chest. Reinforcements were light years away, and the battle was quickly slipping out of their control. Yet she refused to give in. She couldn't. Not when so much was at stake. Not when the Xorthi were depending on them. "We can't give up," Captain Cole said, her voice firm. "We fight until the end. We've come this far together. We're not stopping now." Outside, the battle intensified. The Perseverance took another hit, and sparks flew from the control panel. The ship lurched, throwing the crew forward. Captain Cole gritted her teeth, holding herself steady. "We're losing power in the main engines," Harris shouted. "Shields are at 50%. We can't keep this up much longer." The crew worked quickly to make repairs, but the damage was clear. The Alliance was pushing them to the limit. It felt like they were fighting an impossible battle. Still, Captain Cole remained resolute. "Lieutenant, can we engage their flagship?" she asked. "It's too risky, Captain," Harris replied, his voice tense. "Their flagship is heavily guarded. If we make a move, we risk everything." Captain Cole didn't hesitate. "Do it. We don't have a choice." With a determined look, Harris entered the commands, and the Perseverance turned toward the Alliance flagship. The ship was enormous, bristling with weapons. But the human ship was fast, and with all its remaining power, it launched toward the heart of the enemy fleet. The Xorthi ships, though smaller and weaker, followed their lead. They fought with everything they had, using their knowledge of their own technology to target weak points in the enemy's defenses. The Perseverance surged forward, launching everything it had at the flagship. The battle seemed endless, but the tide was starting to turn. The Alliance ships, caught off guard by the fierce resistance, began to falter. The Perseverance and the Xorthi ships, though battered and bruised, kept pressing on, refusing to back down. Captain Cole could feel the shift in the air. The Alliance wasn't prepared for the unity and determination they were facing. Then, in a flash of light, the Perseverance made its move. The ship's weapons locked onto the flagship's weak point. With a sharp blast, the flagship's shields collapsed, and the Perseverance fired a final shot that sent the massive ship spiraling into space. The remaining Alliance ships hesitated, unsure of what to do. The Xorthi, emboldened by the fall of the flagship, launched a counterattack with renewed strength. One by one, the enemy ships began to retreat, their ranks breaking apart. Captain Cole breathed a sigh of relief, but she knew the battle wasn't over. The Perseverance was damaged, and the Xorthi had lost many of their ships. But they had survived. They had fought together, against all odds. As the enemy retreated into the distance, Kira's voice came over the comms. "Captain, we have you to thank. If not for your bravery, we would have been lost. We owe you our lives." Captain Cole smiled, though her heart was heavy. "We fought together. That's what matters. Now, we rebuild together." The battle had been won, but the real work was just beginning. The Xorthi had been given a second chance, and humanity had proven that no matter the cost, they would fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. As the crew of the Perseverance began repairs and the Xorthi survivors took stock of their losses, one thing was clear: they were not alone anymore. The galaxy had witnessed a new alliance, one built on trust, compassion, and the unshakable belief that even the most broken can rise again. The battle had been won, but the cost was high. The Perseverance was battered, its hull scarred from enemy fire, and its systems were struggling to stay online. The Xorthi had lost many of their ships, their people, and the few resources they had left. Yet, despite the destruction, there was a sense of something new, something worth fighting for. Captain Cole stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars, the weight of the battle still heavy in her heart. The Xorthi had survived the attack, but she knew their world was still unstable. Their future was uncertain. The galaxy was a harsh place, and they had learned it the hard way. The Alliance wouldn't stop hunting them, and there were still many challenges ahead. "Captain," Harris said, his voice low, "the Xorthi are starting to gather in the council room. They're asking for you." Cole nodded, pulling herself together. She had to stay strong for them, for everyone. "I'll be right there." As she entered the council room, she saw Kira standing at the center, surrounded by the Xorthi survivors. They were all looking at her, their faces filled with gratitude, but also a quiet sadness. They had lost so much, and rebuilding would take time. But they had fought alongside humanity, and that alone had changed everything. "We've lost many," Kira said, her voice heavy with sorrow. "But we've also gained something we didn't think possible: hope." Captain Cole stepped forward. "You didn't just gain hope. You gained a future. Humanity doesn't leave people behind. We'll help you rebuild, but it's up to you to take the first step." The room was silent for a moment, as the weight of her words sank in. Finally, Kira spoke again. "We've been given a second chance, something we never thought possible. The galaxy may fear us, but they don't know what we're capable of. We will rebuild our world, and we will rise again." Captain Cole smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "You've already risen. You've shown the galaxy that even in the darkest times, you can fight, and you can win. The Xorathi began to gather their wounded, their survivors, and their hopes, preparing for the long road ahead. The work of rebuilding their cities and their technology would be difficult, but they now had the strength to do it. They had learned to trust again, not just in each other, but in their new allies. As the days passed, Captain Cole and her crew worked side by side with the Xorathi. They helped repair their technology, restore power to the planet's infrastructure, and begin the long process of healing. It was hard work, and progress was slow, but there was a sense of something new beginning. And as the Xorathi rebuilt, they began to reach out to other species in the galaxy. They had learned the hard way that they couldn't survive alone, but they didn't have to. The humans had shown them the power of unity and compassion, and now the Xorathi would share that message with others. On the Perseverance, Captain Cole stood at the bridge, looking out at the planet below. The future was still uncertain, but there was something more now, a spark of hope that had been born from the ashes of destruction. "We've done it," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice quiet but filled with pride. "We've given them a chance." Captain Cole nodded. "Yes, we have. But this is just the beginning. There's a long road ahead, and it won't be easy. But as long as we have each other, we'll keep moving forward." The stars shone brightly outside, and for the first time in a long time, Captain Cole felt that perhaps, just perhaps, they had made a real difference. They had saved the Xorathi, but more than that, they had given the galaxy a lesson in the power of compassion, unity, and the strength that comes from standing together, no matter the odds. The days following the battle were quiet. The planet had stopped shaking, the fires had burned out, and the remnants of the Alliance ships had scattered into the darkness of space. Captain Cole stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, gazing at the now peaceful landscape of the Xorathi homeworld. There was still work to be done, but for the first time in a long while, it felt like they had a future. Beside her, Lieutenant Harris was reviewing the damage reports from the battle. "We took a lot of hits, Captain, but the ship's holding up. We'll be able to make repairs in a few days." Captain Cole nodded but didn't reply. She was lost in thought. The Xorathi had been given a second chance, but what would they do with it? The galaxy had long turned its back on them, and rebuilding would not be easy. But they had proven that they still had strength. They had fought, they had survived, and now they had hope. The door behind her opened, and Kira entered the room, her expression serious but calmer than it had been before. She had seen the worst of what the Xorathi could endure, but now there was a different light in her eyes. "Captain," she said softly, "I wanted to thank you again. You didn't have to help us, but you did." Captain Cole turned to face her. "We did it together. It wasn't just us. You and your people fought just as hard. You've shown the galaxy that you're not done yet." Kira nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "We've learned that lesson, and we won't forget it. The Xorathi are no longer the fallen race they once were. We've survived. And we'll rebuild, not just for ourselves, but for those who didn't make it." The two women stood in silence for a moment, the weight of what had happened and what was still to come hanging between them. It was clear that the Xorathi were not just survivors. They were a new hope, a species that had lost everything but was now ready to build a future. "I spoke to the Council," Kira continued. "We've decided to reach out to the other races in the galaxy. It's time to show them that we're still here, that we're still a force to be reckoned with. And this time, we won't be alone." Captain Cole felt a surge of pride. "I'm glad to hear that. But remember, the galaxy can be unforgiving. You'll face opposition, but you don't have to do it alone. You have allies now." Kira's gaze softened. "We never expected an ally like you, Captain, but you've shown us that we can trust again, and we'll never forget that." Captain Cole smiled, feeling a sense of hope she hadn't known was possible. The Xorathi had taken the first step toward redemption, and humanity had taken the first step toward something greater. something that could unite galaxies, species, and histories. "We'll help you," Captain Cole said. "Wherever you go, whatever you need, we'll be there." This is only the beginning. The communication panel beeped, interrupting their conversation. Harris's voice came through the speaker. "Captain, we've received a message from the Federation." Captain Cole turned to Kira, a knowing look passing between them. The Federation, the larger galactic alliance, had always seen the Torathi as a threat. But now, after the battle, there was a chance to change that. A chance to prove that even the most feared civilizations could rebuild. "Put it through," Captain Cole ordered. The screen flickered to life, and an unfamiliar face appeared. It was a member of the Federation, his expression stern but cautious. "Captain Cole," he began, "this is an official communication from the Galactic Federation. We've been monitoring the situation with the Torathi, and we've come to a decision. We recognize your efforts, and we are willing to discuss future cooperation. This will not be easy, but it is a step toward peace." Captain Cole's heart lifted. This was it, the chance that Torathi needed. They weren't alone anymore. "Thank you," Captain Cole said firmly, her voice filled with conviction. "Let's take that step together." As the message ended, Captain Cole turned to Kira, who stood there with a look of cautious optimism in her eyes. They had fought for this moment, and now they had the opportunity to shape the future together. "We're not finished yet," Captain Cole said, a smile forming on her face. "This is just the beginning." And as the Perseverance prepared to depart, leaving behind a world still healing, Captain Cole knew one thing for sure. The Xorothy would rise again, and humanity would be there to help them every step of the way. Together, they would change the galaxy.